a moment in time in the progress of DiCE, the launch of what we've said a trademark, but a kite mark. We thought it was time possibly for those who are participating. We talk about a participatory group. It's not a membership organisation, so we haven't got a constitution. We've got terms of reference and clear governance arrangements. We've got inclusion criteria for only those who are registered and regulated by the regulators in UK, and exclusion criteria if there is suspension or people are deregistered. So we've got inclusion and exclusion criteria for it, but we thought it was possibly a moment in time where we could have almost a kite mark for the network, whether it was used or not, but it was meant to be both mainly public facing to give assurance. The British standards, BSI, say that when people are looking for something in trade, 99% will always look for a kite mark or a BSI mark. So if you're buying your boiler or your fire extinguisher, no one would buy it without that sort of mark. So it's voluntary, but I think we're going to launch the actual trademark. Has it on screen?
Do you want to see it now?
Oh yes, let's have a look at what it looks like.
Oh.
Little ripple, little ripple. Also.
So that is now a registered trademark. It took a few months, of course, to go through the process, but that is a registered trademark and open to use for any of those who are registered, regulated and part of the DiCE network. And from today, those wishing to use it, contact Claudia. But we don't want it to in any way to be policing, but it might give some more confidence, particularly where regulators are concerned about some of the services that aren't registered or unregulated, which gives a lot of concern. And I'll talk a little bit about that. In fact, today, C&D, chemists and druggists, I don't know if you saw the report, your colleagues in pharmacy, were reporting on a published statement by MHRA. Our first, we'll come to the guides, was linked to androgenic alopecia. It was about the use of finasteride, which is a regularly requested service, which isn't available in the NHS but for online services, and there were some concerns about the safety. There was some issues around where MHRA was saying that they were very concerned about the increasing number of unregulated services. I think they were saying about unregistered but illegal and sometimes just downright very, very unsafe. We don't want this to necessarily distance, well, we do want a distance from that particular sector, but something that might start to give the public confidence around the sorts of service that are provided by the registered sector, and for regulators as well to say that that might just give a note of confidence of the network that is sharing experience. So even for independent organisations sharing data now, which we build into what the second thing is today, best practice guides, or BPGs as they're called. Some have said, what are they and what is their status? I've tried to think of ways of describing it. They're meant to be supportive to the industry and public in the approach that we're saying around the axis of quality and safety, complementary to the statutory national standards and regulations. They're not instead of. They are meant to enhance and describe, possibly in some disease areas in more detail, about the approach that DiCE espouses, supplementary to existing internal procedures and protocols. We're not saying this is the first time that the industry has created this, that all organisations will have their own detailed operating procedures and protocols, but this is supplementary. It's collective in that those who are participating, industry-led by the DiCE participants, and collaborative, as I say, sharing data as well as experience. And finally, clinically led, so it is patient-focused and has a strong evidence base. And these are written, I think we need to congratulate for the first 4 that we'll be publishing tomorrow, being created by Alan Pedder. Alan, who's here with us. Alan was schooled in NICE for 5 years, but has now graduated to DiCE. So Alan helps to coordinate all of the feedback. I was going to say, I'm sorry, he pulls his hair out of it, and you can see that demonstrates because we do get an awful lot of feedback, and we are talking about these documents as dynamic and working documents. So the moment they're published, they might change the following day, depending on evidence, or if there's change in statute. We want them to and our colleagues will be talking a bit more about that. So they're dynamic working documents. Just the final thing is that I was interested in a comment from C&D on a report from Health Watch that said it's not a big issue. Only 18 in the last 3 months, only 18% in our survey of the population of England used online services. 72% don't. That means, on average, only about 10 million people might look to this sort of service. So it's a really important development, both a standard or a kite mark and the BPGs, which I'm going to hand over to my colleagues to talk a little bit more about. So I'm going to invite the people who do the work, just two of the many organisations, 26 organisations are now in the network. So I'm going to invite two of the participating organisations. We have the Chief Medical Officer of Zava Online, Dr. Zenon Andreu, but first we have Superintendent Pharmacist of Pharmacy to You, Phil Day. Phil.